Hi, everyone. I'm going to record a Dvar Torah, a homily that I offered yesterday on my birthday, July 1st, 2023, at Chevra Mishnayes Congregation in North Winnipeg. The Torah reading was the double portion, Chukat-Balak. So in terms of chapters and verses, that's Numbers chapter 19, verse 1, through chapter 25, verse 9. And the Haftarah, the reading from the prophets, was from Micah, chapter 5, verse 6, through chapter 6, verse 8. I'm just going to more or less repeat what I remember having said yesterday, as if it was Shabbat now. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos, everyone. In today's Torah reading, we read about the deaths of two of our great leaders, Miriam and Aaron. And this is so sadly appropriate for our community because we just recently lost Jerry Day, who was the cantor of this synagogue for many years and the teacher of so many in our community. And he really embodied what we're going to be reading at the end of the Haftarah about how God wants us to live. His memory truly is a blessing. The reading is very long this morning. It's a double portion. And I want to encourage you to read along for the whole thing. There's so much there to think about. But the story that everyone seems to remember from this reading is about Balaam, in English, Balaam, and his donkey. And that's what I want to focus on. First of all, Balaam is a non-Jewish prophet, and his words of prophecy are in our Torah. We'll be reading them this morning. And some of them are in our prayers as well. So we learn from this that we are allowed to learn from the prophets of other religions, and even to include some of what they offer in our Judaism. But what about the donkey? The story is that Balaam has been summoned by a king, and he's on his way there riding his trusty donkey when the donkey veers off the path. And a bit later, she bumps up against a wall, bruising Balaam's leg. And then she lies down and won't budge. And each time Balaam is angry and hits her. And finally, the donkey talks to him. And she says, "What have I done to you?" One of the great Jewish Bible scholars, Samuel David Luzzatto, says, we don't need to assume that the donkey was speaking Balaam's language. Maybe she was braying in hurt and frustration as a regular donkey would, but Balaam was really paying attention, and he understood what she meant. And if so, then Balaam is a terrific teacher for us as human beings, because all of us humans need to be paying better attention to what the other animals of this planet are telling us. They may not speak our languages, but they are letting us know what they need, and we all need to listen better. In the Haftarah, the prophet Micah tells us remember Balaam. And God speaks through Micha to us in tones of hurt and frustration and says, "What have I done to you?" The identical words as Balaam's donkey. This is not a coincidence. Already in the Torah portion, there are hints that this donkey somehow represents God. And now Micha is highlighting that by having the identical words in the mouth of God and the donkey. And there is a parable here based on the next bit of the story. After Balaam's donkey talks to him, Balaam's eyes are opened and he sees what the donkey saw the entire time. The angel of God with an outstretched sword blocking the path. The donkey was just trying to save Balaam and herself from destruction. Well, why had Balaam been so angry at his donkey? Because she wasn't taking him straight where he wanted to go, and she hurt him. Why were we for 40 years in the desert complaining all the time? Because God wasn't taking us straight where we wanted to go and was smiting us now and then. Why do so many of us complain in our lives or even turn our backs on God? Because we aren't going the way we want to go and we're getting hurt. Micha is saying to us, listen, Balaam realized that his donkey saw so much more than he did and knew what she was doing. Consider that maybe some of the time God sees way more than we do and knows what she's doing. There's even more to this. One of the things that prophets do is to open up how we think about God. And we think about God in different images and comparisons. Micha is offering us another image, God as a long-suffering she-donkey. And I think this is a very important image to include in our repertoire, because we sometimes forget that God includes all genders. And because we sometimes think that humans are in the image of God and not other animals. And because we may not remember how God carries us patiently through our lives like a beast of burden. But if you think that thinking of God as a she-donkey is a little far out and even silly, that's good. Because Micha, in going out on a limb like this, is giving us permission to think of God in our own ways, no matter how far out. Quite a young man just said to me a while back, what do we think of when we think of God? An old man with a white beard. I'm 62 years old today. I have nothing against old men with white beards, but there's more to God than that. Sometimes we turn our back on God because our images are too limited. Feel free, says Micha, to think of God in all kinds of ways. Open up your imaginations. Trust your intuitions. Be free. The story continues, and the angel of God gives Balaam permission to ride on. He arrives at the king who has summoned him, and the king says, "Do you see those Israelites in the wilderness? Curse them for me." But Balaam is a true prophet, and he only says what God gives him to say. And so he brings down blessing after blessing. I don't need to tell you that if we look around the world today, it seems like we're all under a curse. I began on a sad note for our community, but there's so much sadness and so much fear in the world as a whole. And we say in our prayers for healing that on Shabbat, we don't cry out to God. So I'm not going to cry out, but I want to trust that the great she-donkey will find ways to help us and all of this planet to turn curses into blessings, and that there will be blessing upon blessing for each of you, for all of our community, and for a whole world of wholeness and peace. Shabbat Shalom.